I never thought I'd remember my 29th birthday for the wrong reasons. You grow up imagining that birthdays are supposed to be about warmth, laughter, family, love, all the things that make you feel like you belong somewhere. I always wanted that kind of day. The kind where someone bakes a cake not because it's expected, but because they care. The kind where people don't just show up, they show up for you. I never had that kind of birthday, but I always told myself maybe next year. Maybe when I'm older, things will change. Maybe my parents will finally see me. But that year, my 29th, I realized something I should have understood long ago: some people never change, no matter how much you hope they will. It started like every other birthday in our house: quiet, distant, awkward. My mom was in the kitchen making tea. My dad was reading the newspaper. My sister was laughing on the phone. Nobody said a word about the date. I told myself not to expect anything. I'd learned that lesson many times. But still, that small part of me, that child I never quite silenced, whispered, maybe they remembered this time. I made breakfast for myself. I even set the table for everyone. My mom didn't notice. My dad grunted something about work. My sister walked in, dressed perfectly as always, smelling like success. She always had this air about her, like she was born to be admired. Everyone adored her, even strangers. She was the one who got the grades, the attention, the praise. I was the quiet one, the one who blended into the background like furniture. When she saw me, she smiled, not a kind smile, just that polite one that says, "I'm better than you, but I'll pretend to care." She said she had big news. My parents immediately perked up, eyes lighting like Christmas lights. I hadn't even opened my mouth yet, but I could already feel the air in the room change. She announced that she'd gotten a promotion, a big one, some high-paying position that would take her overseas. My mom clapped her hands, tears in her eyes. My dad stood up and hugged her, actually hugged her, something he hadn't done for me since I was a child. They started talking about how proud they were, how she'd always been destined for greatness. They didn't even look at me. I sat there, still holding my mug of tea, feeling invisible. I tried to smile. I even said congratulations, but no one heard me. My mom started planning a dinner to celebrate her. My dad called relatives. My sister was already taking selfies, laughing, basking in their affection. It was like I wasn't even in the room. Then, at one point, my mom turned to me, and for a second, I thought she remembered. I thought she was about to say it, but she just said, "Don't forget to clean up after breakfast, okay? We'll be busy tonight getting ready for your sister's celebration." That word, celebration, hit me like a punch. I said, quietly, "You mean, her promotion dinner?" My mom said, "Yes, of course. What else would we celebrate?" I said, "My birthday." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the walls. My dad looked up, confused for a moment, and then said, "Oh, right, that's today." My sister actually laughed. She laughed. She said, "Oh my God, I totally forgot. Happy birthday, I guess." My mom looked uncomfortable. My dad mumbled something like, "Well, we can celebrate both, can't we?" But then my sister, with that little smirk she always had, said, "Dad, be serious. This is my big night. We can't make it about two things. It's my moment." And then my mom said the words I will never forget for as long as I live. She said, "Sweetheart, you're right. You're the only one worth celebrating tonight." You know when something inside you just breaks quietly without sound? That's what happened. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just felt this quiet detonation inside my chest. Everything I'd ever wanted from them, love, validation, recognition, it all crumbled right there in front of me like ashes. I excused myself, walked upstairs, closed the door. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and for the first time I didn't recognize the person staring back. I looked tired, empty, like someone who had been waiting for years for something that was never going to come. I thought about every birthday before this one. The ones where I made my own cake. The ones where my parents forgot. The ones where they said, "We'll celebrate later," but never did. I thought about every report card that didn't get pinned to the fridge because hers was already there. Every time they called her, the smart one, the talented one, the special one. I thought about all the times I told myself, they don't mean it that way. They love you too, but love without acknowledgement feels like a lie. That night they held the dinner. The house filled with laughter, with family, with music. I stayed upstairs listening to it through the floorboards. Like a ghost haunting a home that once was mine. I heard them toast to her success, to her future, to her making the family proud. No one came upstairs. No one knocked on my door. No one remembered it was still my birthday, and something inside me snapped. I went downstairs, not because I wanted to ruin her night, but because I couldn't breathe anymore in that silence. I stood there, in the middle of their celebration, watching my family laugh like I was never part of them. I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Do you even know what today is?" The room went quiet. My sister frowned. My dad looked annoyed. My mom sighed like I was being dramatic again. I said, "It's my birthday. But don't worry. You've made it pretty clear that doesn't matter." My mom said, "Don't make a scene." And that was it. The sentence that pushed me past the point of pretending. I said, "A scene? You mean acknowledging that your other child exists? That maybe, for once in 29 years, you could care enough to remember me, to say my name, to wish me a happy birthday before running to celebrate her." My sister rolled her eyes. "You always make everything about you," she said. I laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was the kind that comes from too much pain. I said, "Everything about me? Are you serious? Everything in this house has always been about you. You're the golden one, you can do no wrong, and I'm just the shadow that cleans up your messes." My dad told me to calm down. My mom looked embarrassed. My sister crossed her arms like she was the victim. I said, "You know what's funny? You raised 2 kids, but only one of us ever got to feel like your child." And then I left. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't take my phone charger. I just walked out. I walked until I couldn't hear the music anymore. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I found myself sitting in a park hours later. It was dark, cold, and quiet. I looked up at the sky, and I thought about how birthdays are supposed to remind you that you're alive. But all mine ever did was remind me how invisible I was. I thought about every small version of myself that tried so hard to please them. Every time I said, "Look, I got an A," and they said, "Your sister got an A-sla." Every time I came home crying and they said, "Don't be sensitive." Every time I tried to talk and they told me to be quiet. And sitting there, on that cold park bench, I realized something. I had spent my whole life trying to earn a place in a story that was never written for me. That night was the first night I decided to start over. I didn't go home for months. I stayed with a friend. I found a new job, a new apartment, a new sense of peace I didn't know I could have. For the first time I started celebrating myself, quietly, gently. I bought my own cake. I sang happy birthday to myself in my kitchen. It felt strange at first, almost lonely, but then something beautiful happened. I realized that the love I'd been begging for all my life, I could give it to myself. It took me years to stop hoping they'd change. Even now, there are days I still want their approval, still crave that call that never comes. But I don't wait for it anymore. Because here's what I've learned. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally only know how to love what they understand. And if they can't understand you, they can't celebrate you. My sister and I barely talk now. My parents send texts on holidays. They pretend everything's fine, like that night never happened. But I remember it. I remember the look on their faces when I finally stood up for myself. I remember how heavy my voice felt, like it carried all 29 years of silence inside it. And I'm not angry anymore. Not really. I'm just done trying to be seen by people who never looked at me. Sometimes people ask me if I regret snapping that night, if I regret saying what I said. And the truth is no. Because that was the night I finally became real to myself. You can only hold in so much pain before it spills out. Mine just happened to pour out on my birthday, in front of the people who taught me how to disappear. But the best part of disappearing, you learn how to rebuild yourself from nothing. I started writing again. I started painting. I started doing the things I used to hide because they never cared. I learned to celebrate small victories. Finishing a book, cooking a new meal, waking up and feeling okay. I learned that birthdays don't need balloons or gifts or parties. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is peace. I still remember that birthday every year. Not because it hurt, but because it woke me up. It was the day I stopped being the quiet one and started being the one who finally mattered, at least to myself, and maybe that's all I ever needed. Because at the end of it all, you can't force people to love you the way you need. You can only love yourself loud enough to fill the silence they left behind. So yeah, my parents said my sister was the only one worth celebrating, but that day, without even realizing it, they gave me something far greater. They gave me the reason to finally walk away. And when I walked away, I found something worth celebrating after all. The truth is, birthdays stopped feeling like celebrations a long time ago. They turned into reminders of who remembered, who didn't, and who never really cared to. For years I thought the problem was me. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough, successful enough, or lovable enough to deserve attention. Maybe if I tried harder, smiled more, achieved more, I'd finally earn the kind of love that comes naturally to others. But somewhere along the way, I started to realize that love given conditionally isn't love at all. It's performance, and I was exhausted from performing. When you grow up constantly being measured against someone else, you start to see yourself as a reflection instead of a person. I was always her shadow, her quieter echo, her background noise. Every time I tried to shine, someone dimmed the light and said, "Not now, it's her moment." After years of hearing that, you start to believe that your moments aren't worth existing. So when they forgot my birthday, or brushed it off as something unimportant, it wasn't just one day that hurt. It was every invisible day before it. But that pain did something unexpected. It forced me to ask a question I'd been afraid to face. What if the real celebration isn't about being seen by others, but finally seeing yourself? That thought hit me late one night when I was alone in my tiny apartment, months after I walked out. The walls were bare. The only light came from a single lamp in the corner. I sat on the floor with a slice of cheap cake from a convenience store, one candle stuck in the middle. I didn't even plan to celebrate. It was more like a small act of defiance. A whisper to the universe that I still existed. When I lit that candle, it flickered, weak but steady, and for the first time, I realized that maybe that's what self-worth feels like. It doesn't roar. It doesn't demand attention. It just stays lit, no matter how dark the room gets. I thought about all the birthdays before that, the ones where I'd wait for someone to notice, to care, to say the words that never came. I used to think that if nobody else celebrated me, I wasn't worth celebrating. But sitting there alone, I understood that the world doesn't owe you applause. You have to create your own reasons to clap. Reclaiming your worth isn't about revenge or proving people wrong. It's quieter than that. It's about learning to exist without needing an audience. It's about waking up and deciding, even if no one says I matter today, I still do. It's about unlearning all the lies that told you love must be earned through perfection, obedience, or success. It's realizing that you've been worthy all along, even when nobody treated you like it. There's this strange peace that comes when you stop chasing validation. You start noticing small things that used to be invisible. The morning sunlight through the curtains. The smell of coffee you made just the way you like it. The sound of your own laughter when no one else is around. These things become your new celebrations. Not grand, not loud, but real. Because they belong to you. I remember the first time I bought myself flowers. It felt awkward, almost embarrassing. I kept hearing that voice in my head saying, "You're so desperate. Buying your own flowers." But then I looked at them, bright, alive, unapologetic, and thought, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I give myself the things I've been waiting for others to give me? That's when I realized that self-love isn't selfish, it's survival. Reclaiming your worth is a process, not a single moment. It's messy. Some days you wake up strong, ready to face everything. Other days you crumble under the weight of old wounds. You start to understand that healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering without letting it define you. Every scar you carry becomes a map of the places you've been, not a chain holding you there. People often think snapping, that breaking point, is about anger. But for me, it was about exhaustion. You get tired of proving yourself to people who have already decided you'll never be enough. You get tired of swallowing words, pretending not to care, shrinking to fit inside someone else's comfort. Eventually, your soul starts to whisper, "No more," and that's when the real transformation begins. After I left home, I started writing letters I never sent. Letters to my younger self. The one who used to cry quietly in her room, while everyone else celebrated someone else's achievements. I told her she did enough. That she didn't have to compete for love that was never meant to be earned. I told her she was brave for surviving the loneliness. I told her she was worthy even when no one told her so. And in writing those words, I started to believe them. It's strange how the act of claiming your worth can feel both empowering and terrifying. Because when you've spent your whole life being unseen, being visible, even to yourself, feels unnatural. You start questioning everything. What do I actually like? Who am I when I'm not trying to please anyone? What does happiness look like without their approval? Those questions can haunt you, but they also set you free. I learned to rebuild myself slowly, piece by piece. Some days it felt like I was learning how to walk again.